looking for a new grass to grow, maybe you're looking for a foot tickler, or just something kind of soft, and possibly you've discovered zoysia. And zoysia, I have to tell you, grows a little different than St. Augustine. So we're going to get help growing your zoysia lawn from Bruce Beshan of Carole King Landscaping. Bruce, thanks for being with us.
Glad to be here.
What a nice looking zoysia lawn. Boy, this is beautiful here.
It is. It's turned out really well, and it's a fun grass to maintain. It's a little bit different than I think the perception out there is.
I know. This is something we want to clear up here, and you know, you're doing such a great job here. One thing I think is the cutting height. You know, we St. Augustine maintained it at what, 3 to 4 inches high, and zoysia is different, right?
Absolutely, Tom. This grass really ideally needs to be in the 2 to 2.5 inch range, and this particular stand right here still needs to come down some from when we took over the contract.
Yeah, you're getting it there.
Yes, we are. But ideally 2 to 2.5 inches. Maintain it that way with a good sharp blade. It does not require, as you know, a lot of fertilizer. Or at least not as much as the traditional St. Augustine lawns in Central Florida.
Yeah, well, let's just got to walk along and look at it as we go. What happens to this lawn here if we don't get it down?
Well, it'll attract a lot of fungus problems, particularly brown patch, and it just becomes thatchy and spongy and more difficult to maintain over time. Doesn't take up the nutrients because they get caught up, I should say, probably in the thatch layer, and they don't get into the ground.
Yeah. Now here's another thing. Zoysia's been sold as a drought tolerant. You don't have to water it. You don't have to mow it hardly or anything like that. Another misperception?
Absolutely a misperception. It's probably as maintenance intensive as the other grasses that are out there, and maybe a little bit more so. It requires a normal amount of water, certainly as much as St. Augustine, even though the perception is different.
Now, if you want it to look good, you want it to look like this, you're going to have to water it, that's for sure.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So how about fertilizer, things like that?
Well, we fertilize it in the spring and in the fall, and don't do as much fertilizing as we do with traditional St. Augustine grasses. So from that standpoint, there is a benefit.
Yeah, that's something you can back off on there. So we're going to have to mow it probably as frequently. We're going to have to water it probably as frequently. Maybe not as much fertilizer. How about pests? No chinch bugs, right?
No chinch bugs. It is possible to have bill bugs, although we have not seen that in Central Florida. Our only pest problem is the brown patch that we have to deal with in the fall. Have to be really conscious of it when the weather changes and the nights get cooler.
So you're probably going to need more fungicides. You probably toss away the sprays for the chinch bugs.
Correct.
But you may have to use
correct. You got to be proactive in the fall to get an application down, and then you've got to monitor it closely.
Now I noticed that there is a little bit of shade coming up here, and the zoysia seems to be handling this. This is Empire, but I find in my yard when it gets into the heavy shade, it's probably not a grass for there.
It's not a grass for shade at all. It loves a sunny environment, and it's not going to do well in a filtered or heavy shade situation. It's going to thin out.
So Bruce, if somebody's looking for a zoysia lawn, you know, what would you tell them in general? Should they go ahead with it?
Well, I could tell them that it's nicer to walk in. It's a little bit more comfortable. It's got a good appearance, but it's not necessarily going to save them a lot of money in terms of care and maintenance. I'd also tell them that during the winter time, they have to be conscious of the fact that it's going to possibly go dormant and turn brownish.
Almost guaranteed in Central Florida northward.
Right.
And so it'll come back when?
It'll come back probably March, April, depending on the weather.
Yeah, so don't get scared if it turns brown.
Don't get scared if it turns brown. That's what it's supposed to do, and it will come back. But for a lot of residential people, they're not aware of that when they put it in, and so there's an initial shock that comes with that.
Bruce, thanks so much. We appreciate it very much. So if you're thinking about zoysia, those are things you have to keep in mind. You're still going to have to water it. You're still going to have to fertilize it. Not quite as much as St. Augustine. Mow it closer, be ready for a brown patch, and also be ready for it to turn brown. Get a bulletin from your extension service. They can help you out with that.